They gave us 2 hours to pay £3 million back, or they were going to seize our assets. All these times this has happened, I'm going, really? Is this what I've really fought hard for? The way I looked at it was that you get into this big bucket, and as you develop your business, you try and climb up the walls of a bucket like a spider, and eventually you get to the top and you think, great, I'm cooking on gas, I'm working well, I'm doing everything that everybody wants, both internally and externally, and then someone comes along and just flicks you back in. Get back down there. The fact that, there was two MDs coming together and there was only going to be one.
Steve, thank you for joining me on this filmed podcast.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's a privilege.
What I really want to do with these podcasts is find out more about you, find out more about Stephen. Lots of people will have seen you on our videos with DMG Mori, talking about technology and markets and all the rest of it. But where did your journey begin? Where have you come from? What drives you? These are all things that I want to really pull out in this episode one of this podcast. So really, Steve, probably the best place to start. I know a lot about your current day activity, but I don't really know where it all started for you. So perhaps let's go back to your childhood. Obviously, you're managing director now of DMG Mori here, but let's go back to where it all started. So tell me about that, Steve.
Well, I'm a lot more comfortable talking about the technology because I know that, and I know the industry, and I know what I'm doing. But as an individual, I haven't put a lot of thought into my life in respects of what has happened, and I've actually been quite blessed because I haven't really had any major catastrophes in life, and I've had some major issues, but you overcome them. So as a child, born in London. Lived in the Old Kent Road for some time. My parents moved us out to Bromley in Kent, which was then a suburb of London. So we're going back 60 odd years ago now. We went to the local school and had lots of friends, and a brother who's 11 months younger than me.
But you did say in your notes to this when we were doing the preparation that you felt like your education was poor in some respects. That's outside of the topics that you're talking about, is it?
Well, that's the problem with the class sizes, and you were just left. And when I came to leave school or make the decision whether to stay on and do O's and A levels, which I didn't do, the Careers Master gave me two opportunities. The first one was to join the army, and the second one was to go into the print. And I thought, that's good, because my mother then worked for the Observer newspaper, still going today. And during the Lord Mayor's show, on a weekends of the Lord Mayor's show in London, we used to go to her office and look down onto Blackfriars and watch the parade coming through. It was fantastic. But what was really interesting for me was that at the end of the day, we went downstairs to where the printing room was and looking at the printing presses and how they were putting together the paper for the next day. Fascinating. So I thought, yeah, that's great. My mother's in the paper. Then it was very much trade union movement. So it was kind of, you were either family or you were within the union, so you could get in. And I suggested to the Careers Master that I would do that. And he went, well, I was thinking about selling newspapers on the corner of the street. And that's the kind of help that you didn't get, It was just very, very poor. And, when I look back on my schooling, it was a waste of time. So at 16, I was kind of asked to leave the school. I wasn't expelled. I don't think it was far off it. Seriously, I wasn't a bad kid. But at 16, I was kind of, what do I do? And because I'd been involved with Bromley College of Technology through the metalwork classes, and we were making simple things like, agricultural forks and, stuff like this, then I took to do a full-time technician course for a year at Bromley College of Technology. Managed to pass all the necessary accreditation to get in, and then realised I didn't know how to do my maths. I just didn't know how to do my tables. So I actually took time out, and that's where my parents were very supportive. And, you know, I took private lessons in mathematics, and suddenly I realised I enjoyed it. You know, and I realised the need for it and the application for it. And I think in 1 year of private lessons and working in the college, I probably covered what I should have done in 5 or 6 years at school. So I became quite fluent. I could do my 7 times table, inside, outside, backwards.
Can you remember them now?
Well, no, we work with laptops now, don't we? And we work with, you know, Bill Gates does our spelling for us and so on and so forth. So educational wise, it was pretty poor. What was good was my parents moved us from what was a pretty rough part of London, still is a rough part of London, into, you know, a suburb to give us, you know, a better cultural understanding of what was going on around you. So that helped.
Steve, moving on then from your early days, getting into manufacturing and engineering, where did that all start for you? I mean, you did an apprenticeship.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. So whilst I was working, or whilst I was studying at Bromley College of Technology, at weekends or at holidays, I was working in a company called Muirheads in Beckenham, which were a big company. They made, at the time, some of the early facsimile machines, big stuff for the weather type of applications, and also electrical servo motors, which were quite high precision for aerospace and that kind of thing. So I was working part-time there, and I went to a number of interviews, and again, I really didn't know what was going on. And I remember going to one particular interview, and the guy took me around, and it was working in a shop that manufactured optical equipment. And he looked at me and he went, "You can do better than working here." And he says, "You got a job, but you can do better than working here." And that kind of, what does he mean? What does he mean? You know, at that age, I didn't have any confidence in myself. I didn't have really the get up and go to do things. And you know, I didn't have a very good education. So I'm thinking, what's going on? And everything was a bit bewildering, to be honest. I had lots of friends that were at college doing various things. And I applied for a technician's course at Muirheads, working there, and I got the job. So I was very, very fortunate. In fact, I remember doing the initial phone call from a phone box, you know, to walk half a mile down the road to get to.
And phone
you know,
card or coins? That was probably before the days of the phone card.
Well, I think it was probably half a crown then, so or 2 shillings, you know, or maybe, you know, the pennies going in. But you know, I remember doing that, and I would say that I've always had a very strong work ethic. You know, a long day for me is not a long day. You know, if you know, you get up at 5 o'clock and you go through till 10 o'clock at night, and maybe you're working through to 7, and you do that 5 days a week, that's okay. That's a normal week, you know.
Well, I want to find out how you got to that. So, because we'll come on to a bit more about that, about your work ethic, your goals, your challenges, a little bit later on in the podcast. Your next, a company that's in my mind, Tarax Burger. Now that was,
yeah.
So explain to me about that and how that works, because that's really where, would I be right in saying that that's where your career really started to take shape? Well,
the training that I got at Muirheads as an apprentice technician was fabulous, because if you joined them as a set apprentice, you would spend all your time in a given department. A tool room or the machine shop was a big company, and I was really keen on design, drawing, and working on the drawing board. We didn't have candid or CAD those days, and I did a lot of work there, and I qualified as a jig and tool draftsman. So I was really keen on this, and my boss came up to me and he said, "Steve, and you're like this." He said, "Steve, we're going to buy 2 Machinos, FNC 70s or 80s, something like that, with the early Fanuc control on." And he said, "I'd like you to go on the programming course." And I said, "Well, that's okay, Des, but I really work on the board. I like working on the board. I like doing the drawing, you know, and I've got quite a good hand for it. And this CNC business is not for me. One thing he taught me was there's always two ways to do a job.
Yeah.
You know?
And these are people in your life, and perhaps they'll come out during this podcast that you'll look back with fond memories of how they influenced what direction you took. I mean, we've all got them.
Yeah, this guy did, and you know, it's amazing. So I finished the technician apprenticeship, spent, I guess, about another year working there, and then went to a company called Bench2Boardroom, which is no longer there, but they still exist. They're an American company that make bottle handling, can handling equipment, and it was big stuff. Lots of stainless steels, difficult materials to machine, and they had bought 5 machines from their parent company in America, 3 lathes, 2 machining centres, and I applied for the job as a CNC programmer. I did 2 years working in that company, learned so much so quickly, because
and this is on the machine, this is machining, this is all.
So I was responsible for developing the people on the machines, for the tooling, for the fixturing, for the jobs that went on there, for the style of cutters we were using, for the programming, the Compact 2, everything. I mean, I actually worked in the industrial engineering office, and there was 4 of us in there, and there's another guy that was doing the turning as well. So I focused on machining centres, 2 machining centres with FANUC 7M controls, 1 line, you know, very difficult to read, very complex, lots of I's and J's everywhere that you had to get 100% right to the nearest 10th of a thou. It wasn't microns then.
Well, you had to be really skilled, didn't you, in those days?
Yeah,
to make,
you
know,
had to, yeah.
It was very easy to make a mistake.
Oh gosh, and it was very difficult to actually put it right.
Yeah.
But I learnt lots. I learnt so much, and after 2 years, I saw this job advertised at Turex Berger for an application engineer, and I didn't really know who Turex Berger were, but again, I think it was in the paper when I was away in Cornwall. I remember reading it, and started as an application engineer, and literally the first week, well, there's a machine out there, everyone's down at this particular show or something, can you go and demonstrate it? Huh? What? It was quite frightening.
Can you remember the machine?
I can remember the machine. It was a VA35, and I can remember the company. So some very fond memories. Again, very, very fast learning curve. But I was hungry to learn then.
Well, this was 41 years ago.
Yeah.
When this journey started, really.
Yes.
And there's been many changes in businesses and ownerships along the way. Maybe let's just touch on all those to bring us to where we are then today.
Yeah.
Did you ever see yourself, even in the days we talk about, as being a leader, a managing director, somebody? Was that ever your ambition?
My goal was not to be where I'm sitting today. In the early days, I would never have dreamt it. When I was working at Muirheads, and I spoke to the area sales manager, a guy called Phil Markham, still remember his name, for NCNC, Makino, and I'm going, wow, you've got to sell one of these every 3 or 4 months. How do you do that? And I was really intrigued with it, and of course I was very intrigued with also the sales guys at MDSI, which was the Compact 2, based over in Solihull. And I went on a few courses with them and a few nights out, which was good fun. And I really thought I'd like to do this sales bit. So that's really where I was driving towards. And the application engineering gave me a tremendous grounding with the knowledge of the machines, the knowledge of the industries. And we changed. We went Turex Berger, then got purchased by Hitachi Seiki. So Hitachi Seiki was Turex Berger main agency, although they had a few other agencies. And that was their main agency. And there was a guy called Mike Legg, who was the MD there. Tremendous mentor to me. Absolute, if he sees this video, I send my love to him, because he's been why I'm sitting here today. And he was he was so good at handling people. He was so good at being the captain of the ship that we had a fantastic team that went through with the Hitachi product, and we outsold a number of competitors that we shouldn't have done, because although Hitachi is a big name, it was a relatively small company. And if you compare the size of Hitachi to Mori, I mean, Mori just dwarfs them. So although Hitachi, as I say, big name, it wasn't the Hitachi we know, the televisions and all the other stuff. It was part of it many years ago, broken up by the Americans in the war and separated off. So, you know, we really punched above our weight, but we had a fabulous team of guys. I really enjoyed working with those guys. Some of them are still working in the industry now. Some of them are still working here with us. Unfortunately, a number of now retiring off. We're getting to that age. At some stage, Hitachi in Japan threw the towel in. They were under a huge financial stress. They were developing really excellent products, and some of the early mill turns that were coming out of Hitachi were world leaders from technology point of view. But they threw the towel in. They felt that the way to go was to actually be bought by another company. So when I say they threw the towel in, they stopped trading. So on the Monday morning, we got the message back in the UK. We were highly successful in the UK. We were turning up good turnover, good spares, you know, good employees, good customer base. But we had an intercompany trading loan with the Bank of Tokyo, which was about 3 million quid. Not a lot of money today. I'm not being glib about that, but it's not, you know, in the real terms. And they gave us 2 hours to pay £3 million back, or they were going to seize our assets, basically. And we had about 5 million quid worth of machines and 3 million quid worth of spares, which were owned by Hitachi Siki UK. So we went into self-administration immediately, and this was all driven and led by Mike Legg, who really did a marvellous job, because at the end of the process, everybody got paid 100 pence in the pound, and there was money left over, which is quite unusual for that to happen.
What year was this? Because I'm trying to reflect back on my early days in machine.
Do you know, I get lost with years, Paul, but it was the early 2000s.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned the reputation that the machine had and the business had. I faced the Hitachi Siki machine on a couple of occasions and lost business for those reasons: the quality, the performance, the reliability of the technology, and probably the team and the support that you had. So it's intriguing to hear that is the circumstances that happened. I mean, it must have been a really, really difficult time to, and you talk about Mike Legg, and I'd like to pick your brains on that too, because you mentioned an important word about being a captain. He's a captain. You're now a captain. What was he good at, and what did you pick up from him that you brought into your working career? I
think his compassion to people. You know, he's a tough man. You know, he made demands. He didn't jump up and down. And there was a few things that I made really silly mistakes on that he just rectified me on them. And he was very understanding of people. And that is what a company is all about.
Patience.
Patience. He was patient. He set the tone. You know, he set the level. He set the benchmark that you had to achieve. And he was very well respected within the industry. He went on to become president of the MTA, and I worked with him very closely during that period of his presidency, and he did some fantastic stuff. I mean, we visited, you know, we were in talking to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. You know, he was doing stuff that can't be done today. Working with the DTI, going into the House of Commons, talking to influential people. You know, I remember the meeting I had with Michael Heseltine, and influential people that could make a difference to manufacturing. As I say, you can't get that today, but Mike actually spent 2 years out of the business at Hitachi and left the rest of us to run it. And he was there for support and advice, and he was always there. He was always there. So it was a really good learning curve again.
And do you find yourself, as you matured through your career since then to where you are now, ever, we all do take stock and we think, what would so-and-so do in this situation? What would this person do in that situation? Is he one of those people that you would go, I wonder what Mike would do now?
Yeah,
or do you not do that type of thing? Do you kind of go, no, I've got my own?
Well, I'm not a self-centered person who doesn't understand what the space around me is. I'm very, very aware of people's feelings. You know, I can walk into a room and understand without anybody talking really what the mood is. A lot of people can do it. I'm not unique, you know, but you know, when you have that empathy with people, it's very easy to make decisions. It's also very easy to make wrong decisions, you know, in respect of trying to be too kind, you know, maybe being too soft and not really understanding what the root cause of the problem is. So, no, I tend to make my own mind up. I'm very fortunate today. I've got two great directors, John Henderson, who's the sales director, and Joanne, who's the financial director, who we talk these things through very, very clearly, what we're going to do, how we're going to do things. I can bounce around a bit. I can come up with, you know, good ideas, which when on reflection are not so good. But actually perhaps the driver behind it or the base root of the idea is good. But we have to do it a different way. And we have to do it a different way to bring the staff along, or work with the customers or the suppliers, you know.
You made a point in the preparation to this and the notes as well about having a fairly direct business approach and business language. Going back a few steps, that's something that you obviously practice on a daily and a weekly basis. What does that mean?
Well, I normally practice on my wife. I'm not one of your employees, you know. No, bless her. I have found in life you have to be straight down the middle. You have to be. You can't deviate. If you do, you're going to end up with a poor result, and you're going to end up upsetting someone. So when you went out of your way to try and support and help, it will all turn sour. And that has happened a few times. No real examples I could give you here, but you know, in my life you think, really you should have just been very direct. And the language that you use is also very direct. And you know, sometimes I can be a little bit too direct, but it's been an asset to this company as we've moved through different masters. So we've gone from Hitachi Seiki to Pollard's. Pollard's was then very quickly bought by Mori. So Mori kept me on, gave me a good position, and now as DMG Mori. And when I've had to deal with different people, with different cultures from Germany or Japan or America, you know, you have to understand that, but you also have to stand your ground. And, you know, the business isn't cutthroat. Business is just about making good decisions, about making things that can happen, delivering to the customer. You know, that is critical. If we say we're going to do something, we have to do it. You know, and making sure that you can communicate with your staff in a way that they understand what we're trying to achieve, and can they believe in me? You know.
And now we've it's great you've just explained there Hitachi Seiki, Pollard's, Mori, and then the DMG Mori. When you're recruiting these days, then Steve, I've known you. I mean, we had a conversation back, and we often talk about it back in 2007, something like that, about opportunities to work with you, and of course that never happened for the reasons probably people can see here. But when you're recruiting and you're looking for the right people for your company, where does it start for you? Because, you know, I always listen to podcasts and hear from people, well, it's all about trust, no, it's about skill, there's a balance between all of these aspects that you have to try and identify the right person in. And we all live it. You know, you run a company, I run a company, and you look at your team around you, and everybody's different. Everybody is different, and every different person brings a different skill and a different weakness, don't they? So how do you go about your sort of recruiting and?
Well, I'm very fortunate because we've made a very robust structure here on how we do recruiting. It's very easy for someone to turn up here and you say to them, would you like the job? Oh yeah. Can you do the job? Oh yeah. Why? Well, you're DMG Mori. That's not the answer. That is not the answer. So what we do here is we start interviews with generally departmental manager, service, apps, sales, or even accounting as well, although we've got really steady team there. And these guys interview from a technical basis. And so a service engineer would have the opportunity to come for an interview here. They'll get interviewed by the service manager. Then the service manager would hand over to the service expert, which we've got 4 in the office, and they would grill the guys from a technical element. If they got through that, they would then have another interview with the departmental manager and Joanne, because Joanne, while she's the financial director, also looks after HR, which is a funny mix. It works really well, really well. At that stage, they've then got a decision, are those people or is that person right for us? And then they come to me and they give me the background and then I interview them. And I'm really I'm not interested in their skill levels because that's been done. You know, I'm not interested in can they run a machine or can they fix a machine. That's all been gone through. I'm interested in who are they? You know, what makes them tick? What's important to them? Where do they want to be in 5 years' time? And 1 or 2 of them I poked pretty hard in the chest, you know, and they've joined us actually. And afterwards I said, I don't generally do this, but at this point of interviewing, it's really difficult to get it right. And what we don't want is we don't want to do when we went back 10 years ago when we came together as DMG Mori, just have a revolving door at the front, people coming in and out. So we've learned a lot from that, and we take on the right people, you know. And there's all sorts of reasons why people can join us or won't get accepted, and it's the same in any company. But we go into it as deep as we can, and we kind of, in some cases, try and turn the people off. Yeah, because what I don't want, and we've had it 10 years ago, someone turning up and going, oh, I didn't realise it was like this. And we are tough. We're tough with our sales guys. We're fair, but we're tough. And, you know, if they don't understand what's coming, it's unreasonable for them to turn up on day one and go, wow, this isn't what I wanted. And they last 6 months or a year,
and you've
got
to go through the process again.
And they've lost out, we've lost out, the customer's lost out, you know. So let's try and get it right. It's very difficult.
Let's touch on the challenges that you've faced in your career. I know you've mentioned one which probably stands out quite a lot, the Hitachi Seiki scenario. I mean, you've had a very successful career to where you are today, but there must have been some times that you can remember. We've all got them where you go, geez, how am I going to get out of that one? Or this has happened, or, you know, tell us about those.
Well, the nice thing to work in Hitachi was they had a tremendous team around us. All the guys we were all one, and you could socialise with them, you could work with them, you could actually get support from them. And when it changed from Hitachi, that we lost a lot of that, an awful lot of that, and it was very difficult and quite emotional in certain cases. And really, when we come back to being taken over by Mori, again, very different. And all these times this has happened, I'm going, really? Is this what I've really fought hard for? And now, the way I looked at it was that you get into this big bucket, and as you develop your business, you try and climb up the walls of a bucket like a spider, you know, and eventually you get to the top and you think, great, I'm cooking on gas, I'm working well, I'm doing everything that everybody wants, both internally and externally, and then someone comes along and just flicks you back in. Get back down there, you know, come on, you know. So those moments weren't one day defining moments, they were a moment in time which was quite emotional and difficult to deal with. And as you're growing up, younger, you know, you're full of energy and you're feisty and you know, you want to take the world on, and that's not always the way to do it. So
do they make you stronger the next time though? When you see this happen, you go, I've been here before. I know I can climb back up that bucket again. I know I can get back to the top.
Yeah, that happened particularly when DMG and Mori came together, and you know, it was a case again. We were working as Morisiki in the UK. We had a lovely company, great guys, great support, great product, quite niche actually in a lot of cases. And we were almost picking and choosing our customers. Now, we're not in that world today. We're in a very different world. And I understood that the minute we came together. But I also understood where Dr. Mori was going to take this business. So for me, it was right, this is how we've got to do it. And we know we're going to do it. And to be frank with you, Paul, it was 10, 11 years ago that happened. It's taken that time to get our business in really good shape. I mean, really good shape. I can go and have 2 weeks holiday now without having a problem.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Well, I don't have 2 weeks because my wife won't spend 2 weeks with me. But nevertheless.
But were you worried at that time? Because that was a big transition. That was two very, very huge. I mean, the industry that you know, we live and breathe. These two massive names coming together.
I've never been worried, Paul. I'm absolutely 100%, 110% confident in my ability to sell products. I suspect the change was the fact that, you know, there was two MDs coming together and there was only going to be one. And there was a lot of people rooting for me. And I took the position. At the time, I would have rather have taken the position of the sales director. Looking at it now, I'm really pleased what it's gone through. So there was learning curve, you know, start understanding how the accounts work, start understanding people more, you know, start understanding how the operation needs to be run better, you know, instead of actually just focusing on, I need to sell that machine tomorrow. And that was a learning curve, but I was still very confident in my ability. And that's something that's never left me. Very confident. If I can do this, I know how to do it.
And that does come across every time we meet, and not just, and this is a compliment, not just in you as a person, but in your knowledge of product and knowledge of solution. And I think that obviously that comes back to a lot of what you learn, you know, in the days that we've spoken about in your apprenticeship and beyond. And I mean, I have to say, with my days working for what was then DMG, I think that's really where I learnt so much about machining technologies and the differences between the technologies and pushing the boundaries, developing the new. You know, I was coming out of DMG and going to work for other companies, having sold and been involved in selling machines that no one else offered. And I think that's something that company and the two companies now come together offer. Your work-life balance. I try and do this, and I'm sure you do. You mentioned earlier you'll work 12, 14 hours a day or whatever it takes. How do you manage that? You live in a lovely rural community, so you have quite a lot of travelling to do to get in and out of the office and wherever you might go to see customers. You have the trips overseas to Japan where you'll spend 7-10 days over there. What's the secret in looking as young as you do at your age?
Thank you. Well, you know, there was this thing about Winston Churchill, wasn't it? And Lady Churchill.
Cigars, brandy, and
well, there was cigars and brandy. Was quite a lot of that. But you know, she stopped in the street one day and was speaking to a road sweeper, and he muttered something under his breath, and eventually she came back to him. Who was that? I was just talking to that road sweeper. And Winston said, well, aren't you lucky that you're married to me, the Prime Minister? And she said, no, darling, she said, because if I'd married the road sweeper, he would be Prime Minister, you know. So my wife's been tremendously supportive in different ways, not in a way of helping me how to do things, but supporting me outside of that. Brought up a wonderful son, you know, which I spent a lot of time with at weekends with. And we used to live in Egham in Surrey, so we used to get the train into London every weekend and go and see something, a museum or some St Paul's or something of that nature. Having those two people have meant the world to me, and still do, clearly. And you know, I say now to Mary, oh, I'm not here next week. You know, well, where are you going? I'm just staying in the hotel because it's a bit far for travelling. Yeah, it's fine, you know. And my work-life balance, as far as I'm concerned, is perfect. Although my PA and Mary will tell you otherwise, you know. But actually, I really enjoy what I do. I've met so many wonderful people. I've met some real difficult people as well. But I've met some really nice people along the way. Some have become friends, you know, outside of the business, and experiences. You know, why wouldn't you want to work here? Why wouldn't you want to work for what is the best machine tool company in the world? Having an open line to Dr. Mori, who is an absolute gentleman, and running a really superb business. So for me, you know, long days is what we give.
It's quite an interesting. I asked the question because I had a conversation with my daughter in our family the other night. She's 17, and she's in that position that you spoke about earlier that I've been in. You're leaving school, you're studying, and you're thinking, what do I want to do? Where am I going to go? Where's it all going to lead? What do I want? And she is asking me, she's saying, Daddy, you work so hard. And we talk in our business lessons about work-life balance. I don't think you've got a work-life balance. And I'm like, well, actually, I've got a better work-life balance now than I had when I was working on the shop floor, even though I work less hours. And the reason for that is because my job is almost like my hobby. So I don't consider working to be something that isn't part of my personal life almost. I don't work-life balance. Those two are kind of together for me. Yeah. And I think that's what, when people say you work 14 hours a day, you travel here, you do this and you do that, I think to myself, well, actually I quite enjoy that. I don't know what I would do if I was not doing that. So I think that in itself is quite a work-life balance, and it sounds like you would agree and have the same.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I do enjoy this job, and you know, I'm not counting the days down. I mean, I'm 65 now, so I'm not counting the days down for retirement at all. In fact, I'm challenging, you know, if I can beat the guy who's in Italy who's 73 now at the moment. Yeah, bless him, it's fantastic. Yeah. And you can do so much more. So, and as you know, recently I've become a STEM ambassador.
Well, this is what I was going to try and come on to now. Yeah, I'm intrigued in this. So yeah, you find.
Yeah, I really want to give something back into industry. When I think back, we had this conversation about, you know, my childhood. You know, the schools haven't got the facility to show people what is really out there. And it's up to people like myself to try and open the eyes of people, to show them the opportunities and the possibilities that are out there, and really give something into the industry to encourage people in as well. And the one thing that I've learned, because I've done a few now, the one thing I've learned is they talk a different language to me. You know, I'm sitting there going, yeah, well, you know, we want to work 24/7 and we want to do this. They don't want to do that. You know, people don't want to do that now. Children don't want to do that. So you've got to actually exploit what are the opportunities in a different way. And, you know, coming into DMG Mori, for example, we do everything. You know, we do design, we do manufacture, we do logistics, we do purchasing, we do marketing, you know, we do accounting, we do everything. So there are super opportunities inside, you know, the company just here, you know. But it's giving something back. And when I earlier in the year, got the opportunity and was awarded the status of STEM ambassador, it was probably one of the biggest things for me for a long, long time, you know? Steve, we've just got a £4 million order. Fantastic, great, love it, really good. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Yeah, who's it with? Blah blah blah. You know, Steve, you've made a STEM ambassador. Right.
Yeah.
Tears of joy.
Yeah.
It really was, and I'm really, really proud to do that, and I want to do more of it.
And I think it's really important, Steve. And I think it's fantastic that you're doing it. And I mean, you said you've recently stood up in doing presentations to some of these young recruits, should we call them? And it's hard. It's hard to try and get the energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And didn't you say to me that there was one question you asked them? Can somebody tell me anything, a product that hasn't been involved in manufacturing in some way?
Yeah. Or name me a company or a profession. Name me a profession that doesn't need an engineer. And one of the guys said, a psychiatrist. And I went, oh, right. So I said, did he study? And he went, oh, yeah, he studies. And I said, so who made the books? What was the printing presses? How did he drive to work that day? How does he use his phone? Did he switch the kettle on? Where's the electricity coming from? And it just flows.
But the great thing was you were offering £10 to someone.
£20.
£20 to someone that could come up with an answer.
Yeah.
So you kept your money in your pocket.
Well, my wife's Scottish as well, so she knows what's in my pocket. And if I went home without that £20, I'm in trouble. But yeah, I kept the £20. And it was an interesting exercise because people didn't understand. And one of the nice things, I go down to the MTC periodically and do an apprentice evening there and talk to the parents. And the parents have got it so wrong about manufacturing. They just don't know. I mean, if they're in manufacturing, they understand it. Maybe they work at Jaguar Land Rover, which is a big employer around here, but they just don't know. They say, well, we don't really make much. You are joking. Let me tell you. And you can see the tears coming down the eyes because, there is so much to tell about this industry. There's so many exciting things to do. And my presentation in the STEM starts off with aircrafts, with rockets, with satellites. Satellites, 4,500 satellites going around the world. I was talking to my sales, perhaps this shouldn't go on film, but I was talking to my sales director yesterday morning here at UK time. He was on a bullet train in Japan doing, 200 kilometers an hour, whatever it is. I'm doing, should we say 70, down the motorway. And the signal was just like perfect. It's satellite, up and down. Watches that we all like and, looking at milking cows. Who's going to make all that dairy equipment? It just goes on and on. So you could really open people's eyes and say, all these companies I'm talking to you about manufacture in the UK. Hey, we're not as big as we used to be as a manufacturer, but we have got some fantastic companies.
And there's security in it because everything needs to be made. I think if the youngsters are looking at a career path, which means, or they know that they want security in the future, then, it definitely is a sector to be in.
I fully agree with that because, what I also say to these guys is, if you want, I can't guarantee anything in life, but if you want a job and you become an apprentice and you work in manufacturing, I don't think you'll ever be out of work. You'll be in demand.
Yeah. Steve, let's close this one off now. Final question to you. We talk about work-life balance, and I know you like me, your work is inclusive of your whole kind of personality. But what do you do when you switch off at the weekend?
Well, I like cooking. I very much enjoy cooking. Been on a number of cooking courses, and I'm more kind of experimental. But I do enjoy it. We had some friends over at the weekend, putting on a spread, and that's nice with a nice bottle of red or two. So I enjoy that.
Bit of football on the telly, bit of golf on the telly.
No, I'm not a great lover of watching
the dog
sports
in the field.
and walking the dog in the fields. We got a cockapoo about 5 or 6 years ago. I was absolutely anti-dog, didn't want a dog at all. But, I can't argue. If I'm away from home a lot of the week, so the wife wanted one, and he's turned out to be quite a big dog. He's about 22 kilos, and you know, so it wasn't really what she wanted. She wanted something on the lap. But I go out, where I live, rural part of the world, I go walking in the fields, fabulous, absolutely. And what I do actually, I often put on podcasts of desert island discs, and listen to various people, listen to their experiences as well, which is really interesting. You know, some of the people that we know, famous, you know, celebrities or whatever, and you think, wow, they did that.
You don't really know them.
You don't know, so it's really interesting. A little bit of golf, which I'm absolutely rubbish at, and a bit of gardening, which I've got a gardener who does the heavy stuff, and then I go pottering around. But if I spend a weekend in the garden, God, I know it on a Monday morning. I feel it bedtime. Well, so you know, it's you think gardening and golf is sedentary. It's not. You know, good game of golf, you'll come off pretty worn out.
So you can do the gardening, good game of golf, followed by a nice steak and a bottle of red wine.
Beautiful. What a day.
Steve, it's been fantastic for you to participate in this. I really appreciate you telling us all about your journey, and good luck with the STEM stuff, and good luck with the rest of your career here at DMG Mori. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Paul.